Good afternoon. At least it's afternoon here where we are here in Central Ohio. Welcome to our webinar, Secrets for Maximizing Shelf Life. A special thank you to our hosts, 3Bar Biologics. Today we have some great panelists joining us as well. I'll serve as our moderator, facilitator. They're going to help us to answer important questions like what is shelf life? And why is optimizing or maximizing it so important to businesses? How do you get there? Optimizing the shelf life for your products. And by extension, how does this tie into ag biologics as well as other solutions? So I am Steve DeNunzio, professor of logistics at The Ohio State University's Fisher College of Business. I'm also academic director of our working professional MBA program, at least for another week, right at the end of that particular appointment. And again, I'm happy to be serving as your moderator and facilitator today. As we progress through our hour together here, please remember that there is a Q&A window. And if you have any questions as we go, please pop those into the Q&A window. Despite the fact that the bottom of the screen says that we have two Chris Koenigs. One of those is, in reality, our good friend Giuseppe, and Giuseppe will be keeping an eye on the QA window for us. We'll leave about 15 minutes or so at the end to go through questions. So something sort of stimulates your interest, please make sure to drop it into the QA window. We are also recording this for posterity, and I would assume that you will get a recording link for being here today, and we don't have any sort of slides or anything like that, so no death by PowerPoint today. What I'd like to do now is to introduce our panelists in no particular order other than the one in which I wrote them, and I'll start with Dathel Mimmons. And hi, Dathel. Dathel and I used to work together at Bob Evans, and with 40 years of experience in the agribusiness supply chain, Dathel brings a deep understanding of the industry's challenges as well as innovations. Dathel has held significant roles at leading companies such as Cargill, ConAgra, JBS, and as I mentioned, Bob Evans. Currently, she co-owns Protein Sales Specialist, an international protein trading company. Thank you for joining us, Dathel.
Thank you for having me.
We have Eric Richter. Eric's extensive experience in facilities, safety, and compliance makes him a key contributor to our discussion on shelf life today. Eric is Director of Facilities, Safety, and Compliance at FST Logistics, where he oversees over 1.4 million square feet of temperature-controlled warehousing and a fleet of 70 refrigerated trucks, or as my kids like to joke around, reefers. His role involves ensuring that supply chains operate smoothly and efficiently, maintaining the quality and safety of perishable goods. Thank you for joining us, Eric.
Thank you, Steve.
And last and certainly not least, we have Chris Fiden. Chris, leveraging his extensive experience in the agricultural sector, Chris will offer all of you forward-thinking approaches to optimize your supply chain operations. Chris is COO/CFO at DPH Biologicals, with prior supply chain, operational, and finance experience in leadership roles at BASF, Becker Underwood, Douglas Products, and Biozyme. His specialized focus in agricultural inputs related to biologicals for crop and animal inputs should be a great insight today. And thank you for joining us, Chris.
Thank you.
All righty. I kind of toyed with whether or not I wanted you to introduce yourselves or whether I would do it for you. So thanks for humoring me there. And thank you to all our panelists for being here today. And thank you, attendees as well. So quickly, what is shelf life? Why is shelf life important? And hopefully I don't insult your basic knowledge here, but shelf life refers to the length of time a product remains usable, fit for consumption, or sellable, and retains its desired qualities such as taste, safety, efficacy. Does it do the thing it's supposed to do under specified storage conditions? Shelf life can vary depending on the product type, its ingredients, packaging, storage conditions, factors like temperature, humidity, light exposure, and the presence of preservatives all play a role. And for perishable goods like food and pharmaceuticals, shelf life is often indicated by, a best by date or a used before date, and which helps consumers determine the freshness and safety of their product. There we go. There was the punchline. Today's hosts, 3-Bar Biologics, operate in this space, specifically in agricultural or ag biologics. And these are just natural products derived from living organisms like plants, bacteria, fungi, or other microorganisms that are used in agriculture to do things like enhance the growth of crops, the protection of the agricultural product, and productivity. They serve as alternatives or supplements to traditional chemical fertilizers and pesticides. And I'll tell you what, that is, I'm more of a retail supply chain guy, and it was fascinating to me to learn all about the intersection between agricultural science and the suitability of our agricultural products. Very interesting to me. These products are gaining popularity due to their environmentally friendly nature, sustainability. I can tell you at Ohio State, our students are very sustainability focused. We also have a sustainability institute at Ohio State, and the ability to reduce reliance on synthetic chemicals in agriculture. It's a great way to ensure the shelf life of our products. Okay, and that's it. So I'm going to start with the question. And actually, I think I'm going to start with you, Eric, if you don't mind.
Sure.
With perspective to your role at FST and your time in the industry, how critical is temperature control in maintaining the shelf life of perishable goods? What kind of best practices can you share? And by extension, you share with your clients at FST.
Sure. Temperature control is absolutely critical for perishable goods throughout the supply chain. So perishable items like fresh produce, meat, dairy, pharmaceuticals are highly susceptible to spoilage caused by bacteria growth. And temperature fluctuations can accelerate the bacteria growth process and can lead to the foodborne illness and make us all sick. So our best practices in maintaining this temperature control is by having properly maintained storage facilities, refrigerated reefer trailers, keep up with routine preventative maintenance and repairs on our equipment to avoid any breakdowns. We use a cloud-based monitoring system for our warehouse spaces and trailers. These sensors are placed to monitor temperature and humidity every 5 minutes. We set warning temperature limits, and the system will notify our team by text or email so that the issue can be quickly evaluated and resolved. We have sensors inside our refrigerated trailers that are monitored in real time and will notify our dispatch if any temperature is reading out of spec. And that really helps us take care of the situation and keep shelf life of food good during our supply chain experience.
Thank you, Eric. I'm gonna sort of I'm gonna jump around, as I mentioned, and I want to jump over to you, Dathel, and sort of dovetail into something that Eric mentioned about the cloud-based tracking and the sensors that they have in their fleet. Technology. I know you're a big fan of technology. How will technology play a role in more efficient and effective cold supply chains, specifically with respect to shelf life? What other hot technology can be leveraged?
Yeah, like Eric said, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for us to manage and monitor our shelf life via technology, and it could be it could be sensors and getting that information to the right people at the right time, and it also could be where I don't know if you guys have seen some of the new robots that are out there. So machine learning, robotics, any of those things, instead of a person reacting, the sensor can alert the system, and the system can do its own checks and balances and trying to make sure that there's something that the system itself could do, or if it needs human intervention, it could do that, or if it needs maybe even some sort of artificial intelligence and robotics information or assistance. So it's about sensing what's going on, and then the machine doing everything within its capability to manage the situation, and then escalating appropriately outside of the bounds of the system or software trying to solve the solution. So I'm a huge fan of technology in terms of what it can do to fill the gap that, before we used to check all our reefers by the person going around and looking at every single one of them in the lot. And now we don't have to do that. We can go to bed, and if something happens, ding, it tells the lot person that's, still there moving trucks around, can tell them to go look at it. And if they're busy, then it'll go to the next person. So there's a lot more checks and balances with technology than the one human.
Thank you, Dathel. This is an open question for everybody, and Chris will give you an opportunity to jump in on tech as well. But Dathel, you mentioned AI, and that is sort of the hot topic right now across industries. Everything from it's going to solve all our problems to it's going to take all the jobs to everything in between. Just wondering if any of the three of you have any sort of a perspective on artificial intelligence, maybe specifically as it pertains to this topic.
Nothing from the ag perspective on AI that I would throw in right now.
Okay.
I love the idea. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, there is going to be some jobs that fade away. But did you really need, or I say it's going to replace some jobs for higher level jobs. So like, for example, instead of the person that just walks around and checks temperatures all day, then you have more of somebody who can analyze data, and then it's more data-based decision making that yields to much better business outcomes than just some of those menial tasks. So that's where I see us leveraging AI. I'm not in the camp that everybody's job's going to go away. I think it'll just be moved around, right? What we do changes, and we do it at a much higher, more efficient, effective level. And if that occurs by leveraging AI, I'm definitely for it.
Yeah, we tell the students the future is not for technology; it's for the people in the companies that know how to use the right technology the right way. I think that's a good way to think about it. Thank you, Dathel. Chris, I'm going to come over to you specifically for agricultural products. What innovative solutions are you seeing that improve shelf life?
There are a couple that come to mind. First, you really have to know what your products are and what their critical success factors are for surviving. One of the most unique and effective innovations that I've seen in the past couple of years has come from a company called Milestone, where they have a pail that carries a seed lubricant in the main pail. Then it also has buttons that can be deployed that apply biologicals to that seed lubricant at the time of application. And by keeping those biologicals separated from the seed lubricant, it helps the shelf life or the long-term survival of those biologicals. Can also be very important when it comes to items that need to be co-packed for EPA reasons, that you keep them separated and don't combine a mixture. So that's been a really unique and very innovative product that has enabled shelf life stability to continue to extend to a second season. Another is a previous company I worked with, we developed a proprietary bag in a box that enabled greater oxygen transfer to get through to allow rhizobium to survive better, extended the shelf life of the rhizobium, allowed them to be more effective when they were applied to the field. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to knowing the limiting factors, the organisms you're working with. Cold storage is another thing that really helps with biologicals, depending on the activity. If you have something that's dormant, cold storage might not be as important, but if it's an active rhizobium type product, it's very important for cold storage to enable that long-term success and slow that mortality curve down and extend the shelf life.
Thank you, Chris. Jumping off, you mentioned the EPA. I want to go back up to Eric and then encourage Dathel and Chris to jump in as well. We've got the FDA, we've got the USDA, we've got a lot of parties that are interested in the safety of our food supply chain. Just as an example, what are the key compliance and safety regulations that companies must adhere to or should be thinking about in order to maintain the shelf life of the product, or maybe also by extension, I think just keep those regulatory bodies happy.
Right. Well, definitely, Steve, is having documented procedures and steps to ensure product is maintained at the proper temperature. This comes in forms of food safety plans, HACCP plans to monitor our critical control points. We document temperature of product and the trailer at time of receipt. Document our storage temperature records and trailer temperatures of our shipments all the way to the consignee. Having temperature traceability throughout the cold supply chain is critical, and that does get audited by the FDA, the Ohio Department of Ag. They make routine visits probably yearly to each of our facilities and make sure we're compliant with our processes and our documentation.
Thank you.
To follow on what Eric was saying, OMRI is another important one to reduce cross-contamination. So for us in the food supply, it's to make sure that, procedures like Eric mentioned are being followed. So, you routinely have audits. For us, OMRI is a big one, just, keeping the supply chain free of any cross-contamination issues, whether it be in the manufacturing or in the packaging of products.
So in most of the plants, the USDA, the FDA, even OSHA gets in, EPA, all get involved in audits. But we also have customer audits as well, too. So if you're doing business with any large customer, be it Kraft and or McDonald's, for example, from a couple of different pretty important customers to food companies, their audits are very rigorous and can take several days at a time. And every one of your plants that is supplying them must go through those audits. And then having the third-party audit suppliers as well will come in and they will audit your facilities, all with the focus on keeping our food safe and of high quality.
I want to jump off that audit topic, thinking about customers, right? Coming in with specific needs. How do you? Trying to think of the question I want to ask here. Where my mind is going is, what are they driving in your business right now, based on their needs and their expectations and the evolution maybe of that technology, of the marketplace, maybe of trends in the agriculture sector. Is there anything new or challenging or interesting that your customers are coming to you trying to solve right now?
Well, so not only food safety, food quality, right? They're absolutely looking for, those are just, the par for the course or the ante to enter the game. But humane handling for animals still, that's probably now for the last 15 years, very, very important. They want to audit sometimes all the way back to the original ranch and or farm. They want to know, what is being utilized on those farms and or ranches in the production of the end product, right? So they want to see end-to-end supply chain, not just the manufacturing plant or just your warehouses or your cold chain. They're getting much more interested in who's producing the product that's going to be consumed by my end customers, right?
Yeah. Yep. Um, how how do you accomplish that? So you got me thinking here. We've got. I'm sure all of our attendees know you sort of have tier one suppliers, and they've got suppliers at tier two, and so forth. Um, you know, is there a tip or a trick, any best practice to extending that transparency and that visibility? In out, to tier two and tier three, and exposing that to your customer.
We definitely and my focus really is sort of in the meat industry was probably where I began, and then more in the sides and the meat. But all of my big customers over the years are those retail facing customers that the public sees, and they what they will do is they will come to you, especially if it's a big supplier. But let's just say it's beef, for example. Ground beef would be a great example. They're going to have guidelines of what they're willing to accept. And then you need to push those guidelines all the way back to your suppliers. And then you audit your suppliers based on the compliance guidelines that you have, that your customers are requiring. And yes, when they come and do their audits, they'll want to see your supplier records as well. And they may go to a particular supplier depending on how specific their particular requirements are.
Chris or Eric, you have a perspective?
From an ag perspective, I would say working with your customer to explain the steps in your process, just being able to supply a product on time, those are table stakes nowadays. It's getting into the quality of how the sausage is made, so to speak. From a regenerative ag standpoint, being able to explain to customers how a compost extract, starts as corn stalks and alfalfa hay, and is converted into humus before you even bring it into a plant, and the process and steps that you have to go through with Mother Nature's help to get to that end goal in that end product. Just being able to explain the quality steps through that process help your customers gain more confidence in what you're doing.
There.
What I see, Steve, is customers are really starting to hone in on traceability of the product, and what really helps us in the warehousing aspect is to have a good WMN warehouse management system, so that you can track not only the SKU, but you're tracking the lot code. You can track the expiration or best buy date, and customers will come in, and when they do come in and do their customer audits, they focus on wanting the SKU and a lot code, and they want to see how much of that product came in, where did it come from, where's it at now, who did you ship it to, and all the records for everybody that you shipped it to. So it's really important to the customer and to have a good warehouse management system that can trace all of that product.
Yeah, I love that. Many of us will recall a large, well-known fast food company whose name I will not mention that really struggled with some food safety issues kind of over and over again for an extended and specific period of time. And one of the big challenges for them is they could really never answer the question of what was causing the foodborne illness. Maybe it was several different things. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was geographically isolated. Maybe it wasn't. And I think I can probably speak on behalf of that CEO. He probably would have preferred to be able to answer that question rather than, shrug his shoulders on Bloomberg or CNBC, whatever the case might be. When we look at the supply chain, we're in this eternal tug of war. I tell students that it's like a seesaw or a teeter-totter. We're trying to achieve a balance between efficiency and cost optimization on one hand, and a happy customer on the other. And we can err too far on one side or the other, and struggle as a business. I want to go to you, Chris, with your background in supply chain operations, finance. Now, how do you balance cost efficiency? So doing it the best that we can, or most efficiently, with the need for maintaining high standards of shelf life?
Typically, it comes down to one main factor for me. It's can we extend that shelf life to get one extra season of application, a viability of that product to extend it to one more application pass. If I can lessen the cost impact on the manufacturer, that can lessen the cost impact on the manufacturer, on the distribution channel, and ultimately the end use farmer. Spending extra on creative packaging, cold storage, formulations, all this can add cost to your product, but it's a whole lot cheaper than having to replace product that spoils in the supply chain. That product that spoils in the supply chain, then you have how do you get rid of it effectively and efficiently and responsibly. But replacing that, it reduces the amount of headaches for that supply chain. So extending that shelf life is the ability to create that extra window, widen that window for application, and ultimately mitigate the cost of something going wrong.
Thank you, Chris. I do want to remind our attendees that the Q&A window is open, and Giuseppe is keeping an eye on our questions, which we will get to here towards the end. Success stories. Maybe that's an interesting question. I'll start with Dathan. We'll go around the horn. Some sort of initiative or project that you worked on in the past. Doesn't need to be where you work now, but those are usually the ones freshest to mind. But related to improving shelf life or helping a customer address such a problem.
Yeah, I think probably the most successful projects are those ones start with a Lean Six Sigma Kaizen approach. And we go in and we have an end-to-end team, and we map out the process and then determine what are those steps that we need to take to optimize that process. So at Bob Evans, we when I worked there, we did several projects like that. And it's really, you need, what makes them successful, where you can really optimize any supply chain process, is to get every single stakeholder in the process involved. Because it is amazing how you pull one lever inside the plant and or at a supplier, let's say it could have been a hog supplier, you might create more chaos in the downstream. So it's incredibly important to get the upstream and the downstream, and then make those changes in your systemized process to affect change that actually helps the entire supply chain. And you can, for example, if you do not have good supply planning or good demand planning, then trying to maximize your shelf life is just moving the finish line. You're always going to approach obsolescence of the product because it's got a shelf life. It's not like maybe a bolt that could sit out there forever. So, because of that, no matter how long you extend the process, if you don't have an efficient process in place, then you're still going to reach to obsolescence. Therefore, if you have a very good supply chain with all of your stakeholders working together, then you can maximize shelf life, which is just getting the product to the end customer at 100% value so that they can consume that product, right? At the quality and the safety that they expected.
Chris Fiden, same question.
I would point to, a bit of an answer that Eric had earlier, just being able to implement a proper WMS plan and embracing systems and technology, being able to, for every SKU that we ship, being able to not only identify the SKU, but down to the batch code of what went out, who it went out to, tracing that back to what day it was made on, what reactor it came out of, and who ran that batch. Just being able to trace it from cradle to grave, for me, clear back to the point of where a product was composted and which compost row it came from. So I can literally go from a corn stalk to a finished product on for me on where a product came from and where it went to, and being able to understand that through our system is highly critical and increases the confidence of our own internal team and our customer base.
Thank you. And Eric.
I'll tell you the biggest improvement in shelf life management that I've been a part of was definitely going back to the cloud-based temperature monitoring system. Back in the day, and I'll tell you, as recently as 2018, we were monitoring temperatures manually, recording all the temperatures every 3 hours on paper logs. This opened up the door for human error and of risk of not recognizing a temperature issue in real time. So we did the temperature mapping of our spaces to determine all of our high and low spots and placed sensors in them and turned on the cloud monitoring system. And it's been a real shelf life saver. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, Christmas morning, I get a notification that the temperature of a cooler has reached 37 degrees. When we're running it at 34, critical control points 40 degrees, I get an alert that says 37 degrees. So I take a look at my phone. I can actually look at the graph of the temperature and tell you that yes, it is rising up and there is an issue. So I hop in the car, head to the warehouse, call my maintenance guy. He meets me there. We find out, yep, the cooler is broken down. We had like 40 pallets of perishable food in that cooler. We were able to jump on forklifts, get that product moved over to another cooler inside the same warehouse. And I tell you, if we didn't have that real-time monitoring system in place, we would have lost that product.
Wow. On Christmas.
Yeah, of all times, right?
All times. Thank you, Eric. This question is from one of our attendees, and I'm going to share it now. And this one I think goes to you, Chris. What trends do you see in terms of biological formulations, for example, liquid versus wettable powders?
You see a trend that's actually moving the opposite direction. It started out as everybody wanted a liquid product. But as you started with a product that went on to seed for seed treatments, that's a very crowded space. So you see more of a trend moving to a dry that can be applied just in time back down to the farmer level at the field or at the dealer level as they deliver seed to the farmer. So you're seeing more products move that way to a dry. Liquids are a bit of a challenge to shelf life because liquids have stability issues. As you take biologicals and formulate them into liquids, you typically see them become inactive. In some cases, you're able to stabilize things, but most times you've got an active that you have to control that living environment clear through the final landing spot of that seed hitting the ground. When it comes to in-field application, it's a good mix of wettable powders versus liquids. Liquids are still the favorite because it's easier to blend a liquid in and you don't have to worry about dissolvability issues of a wettable powder. You can overcome that with a proper formulation and proper steps to make sure you're checking boxes to see the products get into solution without significant mixing challenges.
Thank you, Chris. Whether at the company that you work at now or at one in the past, think about the human element of maximizing shelf life. And yeah, you're welcome to answer this in any way that you choose, but I'm sort of thinking about culture, corporate culture, training, like, if this is critical to your customers and by extension, their customers, the consumer, if you want to think about it that way, how do you drive your own organization to give it the focus that is needed, if that question makes sense? Anybody can answer that one. How do you enroll your own people, train them, culture, reward systems?
Well, I'll tell you what we do, Steve, is because we have 5 warehouses, and they're all third-party audited by the AIB, and we have competitions on scores. Who scores the best? Who has the most improvement? We advertise that. We can celebrate with a cookout or gift certificates or something like that, and it's really helped our food culture. When we do our own internal audits of our warehouses, we get employees involved in the audits. We give them a flashlight. We train them what to look for, what to inspect, whether it's pest control or outside, looking at any critical control points or things that could be an issue. So it seems to really help within our organization.
Cool. It's kind of gamification, right? It's the concept of turning work into a game. Chris.
Yeah, I fully agree with Eric. Getting your team involved. So we focus around a three-legged pillar, if you so to speak. One is safety of our employees. 2 is quality of the products we ship out. And 3 is around our productivity or effectiveness in getting products out. The safety piece, it's listening to the team on the floor and making sure that we're not reacting to issues we see, but really trying to be proactive. If we see an issue, that we can make a better working environment for our team, that not only we listen, but we implement. When it comes to quality, it's the person that knows the best about the quality of the product are the ones that are closest to it, that are making it and are packaging it. So, getting their input on the process and how to make things better, it creates a better working environment for our team, but it also creates a better product for our customers. And then, looking at the productivity, it's like Eric said, it's being able to manage what goes out the door. And when you hit certain goals for the month, you have a cookout or you have a bonus, or there's something that's a shared goal that the team can look at and measure and manage to. That's really been effective for us.
Love it. I used to work at Lululemon. We'd drive a taco truck in and give everybody free tacos. Winning hearts with tacos. Dathel, go ahead.
Giving your employees real-time data, the tools that know what's going on, training them, providing the right culture, and then make sure that, having real-time dashboards with the key performance indicators that you're wanting to focus on, and then incentivizing the behavior or outcomes that you're looking for. And I personally like the little cupcake van that comes by, and we use that as well. So there's lots of ways to incentivize people, whether it's recognition or small things, and obviously, bonuses or those kinds of things as well. But just making sure that they have the data and they know what key performance indicators that you want to focus on, and showing where they're doing at all times against those KPIs, and then incentivizing those behaviors to reinforce that.
Guys are making me hungry. Okay, very good. Dave, I want to stick with you for a minute, although I encourage Eric and Chris to jump in as well. And we've talked about trucks. We've talked about, temperature controlled warehousing. Dave, I seem to recall that your business is international. So my question, I guess, to all of you is, for anybody that might be attending or watches this later that deals with moving perishable product internationally, like it's going on a plane, it's going on, a steamship. I can't believe we still call them steamships. Maybe into an intermodal freight container. And it's going to, go on a longer journey. Anything different or anything else that our attendees should be thinking about when it comes to international shelf life, maximizing shelf life?
I also teach a class at OSU, and we talk a lot about risk assessment. And any time your supply chain transit time is extended, then you introduce more risk, right? So, the risks of international travel food products, it could be geopolitical, it could be currency. So, any financial risks, it could be communications, or on each end, you're going to have your governmental regulations. We do a lot with Australia and New Zealand. So coming into the port and getting that product offloaded in a timely fashion, held at specific temperatures. I mean, think about product if you're shipping fresh lamb from New Zealand, Australia to the United States, and then it gets stuck in a port, right? During COVID, that happened, right? So just making sure we only have a certain amount of time to get that product off that ship into a truck to the customer. And any delays whatsoever adds risk to that system.
We remember the famous example of the 2014 port slowdown on the West Coast when they had millions of dollars of apples and oranges just turning into cider because we lacked the capacity to move them. Chris, there is a question in the Q&A. This is most assuredly for you. What no-nos do you see in biological formulations? What is universally unliked by the manufacturing teams, distributors, and growers?
What's universally unliked is a product that has handling issues. Anything that slows a farmer down when it comes to an application issue that they have to go through extra steps in the process. That typically is something that is a no-no. Anything that requires significant handling concerns and challenges. And sometimes when it comes to cold storage, it's not very practical for a farmer to try and cold store a product that has to be applied of multiple, a gallon per acre, for example. So being able to supply a product that might not need those types of handling requirements is something that's critical to allowing your supply chain to have success and not have to step through extra hoops to remain viable.
Thank you so much. One of our attendees, Jane, has asked a question. I like this one. When you hear smarter supply chain, what does that mean and what kind of innovations are needed? What is smarter? What does it mean to become a smarter supply chain in your mind? Anybody?
For me, a smarter supply chain would be more interaction between your customers and your suppliers. So as a manufacturer, for us, it's working with our customers to know what their expectations for delivery are so that we can then work with our suppliers and make the whole supply chain come together. So we can cut down the timeliness and the delivery and the lead times from cradle to grave to make a supply chain shorter in getting a product from cradle to grave. So it's getting more interaction between the entire team so that everyone is communicating on the same page when it comes to making that happen.
Eric, what do you think?
I think automation has to be key to that, to automate the communication, to make sure that we're properly notating, when product can be moved, when it can be delivered. There's a lot of appointment time, scheduling, delays that happen when you're in trucking, and how does that get communicated in real time, automatically? People like to go on the website and look up to see where their order is or where their product is at, and that's very important to be able to automate the communication.
Dathel, what do you think?
I think that transparency, communication, coordination between all the people that are in the chain, finding one of the things we talk about a lot is smart contracts that using blockchain. So we can all see one of the things that, let me go back to one of the problems that I think that a smart it's a smart supply chain actually focuses on and helps solve the problem. That is, for example, every time you deliver a truck with a perishable product on there, and if there's a problem with that, then you don't have the three-way match, and it takes months to get those delivery documents and everybody to agree, and then actually get payment on that product. So if you're using blockchain and you can all see everything that's going on, the PO, the actual order and the delivery and the receipt documents, if everybody can work inside the same document, the inside of the blockchain, then when there is a problem, then you can fix it in real time instead of waiting. It used to take us sometimes 3 and 6 months to get the bill of lading from the trucking departments of these third-party trucking companies. And then basically you haven't been paid for your product in 6 months because they don't just pay for part of the product, they just don't pay for the entire PO. And all you're waiting on is for us to coordinate the information. And so having a smart contract or using blockchain for that process can really solve a lot of headaches.
Yeah, it's a great application for blockchain, based on transparency as well as trust. And it's something I'm very much looking forward to outside of our realm today. If we can apply those smart contracts to things like buying a house and buying a car, I think everybody's going to be much happier with that result. A question from an attendee, and I will caveat this with none of the 4 of us work for any companies that offer any of these solutions, I think. So we're not offering any endorsements or anything like that, right? So
No.
you need to be careful. But essentially, the attendee is asking, what are the best systems you've used and been happiest with regarding both product manufacturing, traceability, and warehouse management?
Well, for us, Steve, we use a system. It's called Cadence for our warehouse management system. It's small. I think we're probably the largest fish customer for them, which makes it good as far as when there's additional needs. Say, for example, recently we've gotten into directed put away when we receive product into our warehouses and we want product put in a proper manner away on our racks. They were able to come up with the programming and really help us get done with what we can do. Now, what you got to be careful of is you can go out and buy the bigger Manhattan or the big box solutions, but then the customization for individual needs won't be there. You have to do whatever that system is capable of doing, and that's what you get.
So I have a lot of experience with this particular area. Having implemented both, I worked with Infor, SAP, and Oracle, and the customization required for meat products is especially difficult because every animal that comes in to be harvested is a different weight and yields differently. And then also with so if you put a PO in for 40 hogs and you're saying you can only put the PO in for 40 hogs that weighs an exact amount, most of these systems require tons of customization. It's not like eaches or units. So it's very challenging when you have a unique situation to use the big box products. So sometimes the best of breed products are better.
Chris?
For us, I've been in a couple organizations that have used SAP. Right now, we're on SAP B1, which is for small and medium businesses. Really, to us, the critical piece, we've been able to implement everything we really wanted through it. But having a good implementer is critical when you reach points of trying to get access to data or trying to learn how you can use the data. Having a good implementer that can help you figure out what little, how little customization can I do, because every time you customize, you're spending dollars that you could spend elsewhere in your supply chain. So having a good implementer is key, but for us, SAP B1 has been really good.
So Chris and Dathel, I'm glad. We have about 10 minutes left, by the way, and the Q&A window remains open. Trying to keep an eye on that for you. Chris and Dave, I'm glad you mentioned customization, and the question, this is to all three of you in no particular order, is I'm gonna do a twofer here. So first half is hidden costs. So everything that we've talked about this afternoon comes at a cost, and sometimes we're taken by surprise because whatever inadequate requirements gathering, or a problem is so new, we're the first ones that ran into it, or whatever the case may be. So part one of the question, and you can take these in either order, is hidden cost. And the one is maybe a little bit more personal, just for all three of you, is when you got started in this industry, in this sector, what do you wish you had known then that you know now? So lessons learned and pitfalls, and maybe things of that nature that you can share with the attendees.
For us, a lot of the hidden costs come into the people that have to run the systems and the documentation you have to follow to make that happen. Probably one of the things I wish I knew sooner was to try and get in front of technology. So don't be the person that's resisting the technology that's coming through. Try and get to the front of it. And that's what I've tried to do, be more proactive and get in front of those issues instead of reacting to what's coming backwards down the pipe.
Eric, what do you think?
I think what I wish I knew then that I know now, kind of like what Chris said, is get ahead of the curve on technology. There's a lot of things in my world that's starting to become new or prominent on my plate, is like environmental sustainability, and making sure that we have systems in place to be able to track our carbon footprints by our trucks, our trailers, the reefer units that burn diesel, and just to have everything in place instead of trying to do that all by hand at the beginning. And hidden costs is definitely the stuff that goes into keeping a facility up and running is the maintenance. If a compressor goes down, you're talking, it could be a $10,000 or more replacement, and so there's hidden costs that you don't always necessarily build into your price, but you hope that it fits within your budget so that you're continuing to make money and revenue covers it.
Dathel, hidden costs, lessons learned. Wish you knew.
I would say the hidden costs that I think that most of us don't realize is the cost of poor execution. So, if you send too much or too little product, you either lost sales or maybe even turned a customer to another product permanently. Those hidden costs of being short or long. It's not just the loss of the product, it could be the loss of the customer because your demand didn't equal your supply. And I think the one of my lessons learned is don't start any technology project with poor process. So start with defining what your optimized process ought to be, realizing that that's a journey and it's continuous improvement. But try to optimize your process and then build your system to the optimized process versus the other way around, because all those rewrites cost a lot of money.
Thing with Shigeo Shingo, it's one of the founding fathers of Lean, that said, take a bad process and automate it, and the only thing you've done is created a bad automated process. And I think that's
that's what I meant to say.
Probably a good observation. Well, we have about a little bit less than 5 minutes left. I would happily take 5 minutes worth of questions in the Q&A window. We kind of been picking away at them as we go to try to keep up with them. So if anybody has a question, we remain at your disposal for another 4.5 minutes. He says, pausing. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, hearing or seeing none, we certainly thank our attendees for joining us. A special thank you to Dathel, to Chris, to Eric as well for joining us. And Chris says he has sent questions. Oh, there are questions in the chat. What? Okay. Well, let's see how many of these we can get out of the way in 3 minutes. What are where is that talking about? Smart packaging? What role does smart packaging play in maximizing shelf life? I think that'll be our last one.
For us, smart packaging in ag is like the example I said earlier with the pail. It helps to keep things separated so that they survive longer. So more of those types of things that are coming to market are going to help improve the shelf life for the ag biological sector.
Eric or Dathel?
It'd be nice if the packaging could actually, I mean, obviously we're not there yet, but it would be nice if the packaging could notify you of what's going on with the internal product someday, way in the future probably. But there are some new things coming out with packaging. I mean, we have MAP, of course, which is the modified atmospheric packaging, gas flushed. We have, vacuum sealed, which removes oxygen, but then they're coming out with some nanotechnology packaging, and it seems interesting. So we'll see how that sort of starts to play out.
Yeah, the type of innovation that I've been seeing, not necessarily with packaging, but for tracking packages through wherever, through the supply chain. So there's disposable labels now that actually have sensors in them that can track temperature, humidity, shock, and light, and could give that feedback to what that package experienced throughout the supply chain. So that's really interesting. I think the cost is really high right now. Those labels are somewhere around $30 a piece. So shipping and handling costs would go way through the roof for anybody using those. But, if you have something that's really valuable that you need to track, maybe something like that's worth having.
Well, we can recall radio frequency ID, RFID tags, how prohibitively expensive they were, and that cost has come way, way down, and adoption's gone way up. So hopefully we'll see the same trend. All right, now I will end us. So on behalf of myself and Eric and Chris, Dathel, our friends at 3 Bar Biologics as well, we thank you for joining us, whether it was here in Zoom or on LinkedIn Live. This was recorded, and I'm sure that there's a plan to share it with everybody. In the meantime, we hope that you'll join us for another webinar very soon.